Chapter 10 Some Semblance of Normalcy. At 1 p.m. sharp, to everyone's collective amazement, the entire crew assembled in the heist room. It was the first time everyone had shown up anywhere on time. The energy in the house had shifted noticeably since Jeff's announcement. There was a sense that something was going to be done, and everyone was ready for that kind of distraction. It was hardly a surprise when Jeff had the laminated map of Los Santos laid out on the table, marker and pins showing the planned movement of the crew in local areas of interest. It looked and felt just like a heist, but this would be so much more. Jeff's eyes had a clarity the crew hadn't seen in days, and he smelled less like whiskey and ketones than usual. He didn't even have his trademark glass in hand. "All right," Jeff began, pressing his palms together. "This morning, Gavin came up with a lead on Shadles." He pointed to Gavin, who beamed, also seeming revived by the sudden activity. The guy in the alley that Jeremy killed was Alphonse, a former Vagos member, and recently he'd been hanging out in online chat forums, which seems to be where he met Shadles. Like Ray said, he runs with a group of nobodies collectively referring to themselves as randoms, which is pretty fitting. But as it turns out, they've gotten into our communications. We haven't been able to get much information, but from looking at some of their exchanges, it seems like they've been following us for some time now, turning up to random jobs and trying to fuck with us. They're probably the reason so many of our heists have turned out." He paused with a slight cringe. "Less than ideal recently." There was a collective scoff from the crew, followed by incredulous glances. "So they weren't mercenaries shooting at me during Jack's heist," Ryan said, shooting a look at Gavin. "And it's not because I'm crazy." "Probably," Jeff nodded. "It doesn't change that you're still mental, Ryan," Gavin added, Ryan smirking back at him, shaking his head. "How did they manage to get in without us knowing?" Jack asked, bringing the conversation back on topic. Jeff looked at Gavin, who nervously chewed his bottom lip, eyes darting around the room. "Well, it sort of looks like they got in when we added a sixth member to the crew," Gavin said quietly. All eyes were suddenly on Ryan, who stiffened, taking a slight step back defensively. Jeff spoke up before anyone could react further. "Nobody's accusing you of anything. It was probably an accident. A channel got left open or something when we added you to the comms." He didn't sound entirely convinced, but the authority in his voice indicated no one was going to challenge it. "So they've been in our comms since Ryan started." It was less of a question and more of a statement from Jack. "How the fuck are we all still alive?" Michael exclaimed with a hysterical giggle, his face equally bewildered and amused. Jack looked troubled. "So that means they're not getting enough information to do anything with yet. Or they're not organized enough. Or they've just been laying low. What are they waiting for?" "And why?" Jeremy asked genuinely. "I mean, sure, we're not exactly model citizens, but we're better than the Vagos and the other crews that used to run this town." "Oh, I think I might have an idea. It's petty, but you'd be surprised how petty people can be," Jeff explained with a smirk. "Back when we were starting out, we were pretty well known, but hadn't worked it out yet. We used to have dumb kids try to join the crew all the time. We started off civil enough, explained we didn't need anyone else and whatnot, but some of them were persistent and sometimes they just wouldn't take the hint. So after a while, Jack would just answer the door and tell them to leave." Jeremy looked skeptical. "What? Just leave?" Jack grinned. "Yeah, I'd just open the door and say, 'Leave.' I don't think that ever didn't work. They'd just fuck right off." Jeff laughed. Jeremy's eyebrow raised. "Jesus, you think you might have pissed them off?" Jeff shrugged. "Probably. Didn't care at the time. Suppose it might have come back to bite us in the ass, but I hardly think that's reason enough to try to take out the crew. Who knows?" Ryan shifted uncomfortably. He had a nagging feeling that this was more personal than hurt feelings. He'd been through a lot before joining Fake AH, and something about this felt vaguely familiar. Jeff planted both his palms on the table with a thud. Anyways, we know they have access to our radio communications, and they know we've been silent for a while now. What we need to do is plan a heist. Ayo! Gavin almost involuntarily yelled, and the crew laughed. Problem, Jeff pointed out. We don't know how deep this goes. We have no way to know how many of these randoms are out there, or how many have it in for us. This could get really dangerous, so we've got to be at the top of our game. Jeremy's eyes brightened. We could try to infiltrate, find out how they got together in the first place, and get a feel for the group. Jeff nodded slowly. All right, Lil J, that's your job. Pick up a burner laptop, second hand. Make sure you're untraceable to the crew. Gavin, help him if he needs it. Gavin and Jeremy nodded. Jack, you and I will plan the actual heist. The place we're going to be hitting is a jewelry store on Portola Drive in Rockford Hills. He indicated the position on the map. Classy, Michael commented. Jeff continued. It has to be something legit and big enough that they will see an opportunity to attack us again, but this time, we'll be ready for them. Jack nodded, a smile spreading across his face. Oh yeah. That's where you two come in. Jeff pointed at Michael and Ryan. There's an alley that runs behind these stores. That's going to be our exit, and that's where we're most likely to get jumped. So we're going to need to set some traps. Aw yeah, Michael exclaimed. You picked the right guys for the job, Jeff. We'll bring the ruckus. I'm thinking big. Lots of explosions, maximum carnage. Send them a message. Ryan's eyes narrowed. No, we want to take them alive. At least, some of them. Jeff grimaced a bit. Look, just make sure you're clever about it. Ryan, keep an eye on this one. He jerked his thumb at Michael. Once we've got a solid plan, we'll work out how to sell it to these clowns over the comms. Then, we can figure out what to do with them. He added darkly, Ryan, you get first go with them. Something evil flickered in Ryan's eyes as one corner of his lips curled upwards in a crooked smile. It was the same look that often made the crew worry about his sanity. We'll meet back here tomorrow to go over the plan and work out the details. Everyone cool? Everyone nodded. Okay, get to work. Ryan and Michael packed 2 duffel bags full of a variety of traps, tripwires, explosives, and timers, and headed out to their makeshift demolition range at the base of Mount Chiliad. Ryan drove while Michael stared listlessly out the window, still unusually quiet. You've been out this way a lot recently, Ryan ventured. Mm-hmm. Michael just hummed in response. Ryan was usually fine driving in silence. Preferred it, in fact, particularly if Gavin was in the car. But Michael wasn't his usual energetic self, and it was starting to bother him. It had felt like they'd all just been starting to get back to normal, and something had set him back. Michael was still struggling to come to terms with Ray's death, and being in the car with Ryan probably wasn't helping. Ryan was observant enough to realize the source of the awkwardness between them, although he lacked the necessary social skills to rectify it. The words were out of his mouth almost before his brain could process them. Hey, you'll probably be able to finally overtake Ray's gamer score soon. Michael's heart felt like it dropped to his knees. Ryan saw his reaction and knew immediately it was very much the wrong thing to have said. The color drained from Michael's face, and his breathing got shallower. Ryan expected an outburst, but Michael remained dangerously quiet, eyes focused intensely on the road ahead. Dude, that's a fucked up thing to say. Michael kept his voice low and tight. Ryan just cringed and kept driving. He glanced at Michael every now and then, and Michael would catch him and scowl. Stop staring at me, Ryan. I mean it. Just stop. They drove the rest of the way in silence, Ryan focusing on the road, sneaking glances at Michael when he was sure he wasn't looking. Michael grew more agitated the closer they got to the range, muttering away to himself. Ryan managed to catch the words, robot, psychopath, monster. and a whole colorful variety of expletives on Michael's lips. The way he was glancing at him every now and then made Ryan assume the comments were directed at him. He held his tongue. When they arrived at the range, Ryan checked to make sure the place was absolutely deserted, and Michael grabbed the bags. He brushed past Ryan indignantly, knocking him hard in his bad shoulder. On top of all of the snide marks and snarky comments Michael had been making under his breath, Ryan finally snapped. Jesus, man, what is your problem with me today? Michael turned, dropping both the bags, making Ryan flinch at the thought of handling such a cache of explosives so carelessly. Ray's gone, Ryan. He's gone. And you're just shrugging it off. He was shaking with rage, fighting back tears. He'd obviously been building to this. Ryan pulled off his mask, dropping it to the ground beside him, revealing the black and white skull design, tinged with faint green and yellow remains of bruises, his clear blue eyes intense. He moved closer to Michael, but Michael didn't back down, just stared up at him defiantly, eyes shimmering but determined. Do you blame me? Is that your problem? No! Michael choked out a little too loudly. No, he repeated quietly. But he's still gone. Ryan sighed, but he retained the air of cool detachment. I know. I miss him too. Then why can't you fucking act like it? Ryan grabbed the sleeve of Michael's brown leather jacket and pulled him in close, wrapping his arm around the lad tightly. Michael buried his face in Ryan's chest. He could feel warm tears seeping into his t-shirt, and Ryan rested his cheek on the soft curls of Michael's auburn hair. It was the first human contact either of them had had in weeks. I miss him too, Ryan practically whispered, but it came out so pained, and Michael could hear Ryan's breath catch in his chest. Michael sniffed into Ryan's jacket. You're just so fucking calm about it. I don't get it. You and Ray were so close. How do you keep it together? There was a long pause, and Michael could feel Ryan swallow. I don't. They stayed like that for a few moments, until both had regained their composure. You okay? Ryan asked, looking down at Michael. He nodded. Yeah. You? Yeah. He smiled softly, pulling away from Michael. Now, how about we test out these tripwires? Remember Jeff's plan to create a death funnel? Michael looked at him quizzically. Ray said it sounded like the name of a Slipknot cover band. Michael laughed. That's right. You guys wouldn't stop talking about it. Jeff was starting to think you were serious. He laughed again at the memory, and it felt lighter. Ryan laughed too. I think it's time we revisited that plan. It was late when they returned to the house, a spread of pizza on the kitchen table, already half devoured. Gavin and Jeff were still picking up pieces, while Jack and Jeremy sat on the couch playing video games. Michael and Ryan dropped their bags and joined Gavin and Jeff at the kitchen table, immediately turning their attention to the pizza. Michael filled a plate with no fewer than 5 slices, while Ryan picked disdainfully at the chunks of onion that appeared to be on literally everything before giving up and eating them anyway. Productive day? Asked Jeff. Michael and Ryan looked at each other, their mouths both equally stuffed with pizza. Michael attempted a reply anyway, coming out mumbled, Okay, Jeff erupted into laughter as some of the masticated food flew from Michael's mouth and hit Gavin in the cheek. Gavin squawked and then nearly gagged before giggling. That was gross, Michael. Ryan finished chewing and then answered Jeff's original question. We're revisiting the idea of the death funnel. Jeff cocked an eyebrow. Please don't tell me you mean your Slipknot cover band, because I told you, you can't just start a band because you like masks. Ryan looked comically thoughtful, holding up one finger as if to protest, before going back to exaggerated thought. Michael had swallowed his food by now. It's gonna work this time. The trap, that is, not the band. That'll never work. Ryan laughed. Hey, Ryan, I've been thinking, Gavin started, absently picking at toppings. Ryan noticed Gavin hadn't been eating his crusts, a habit that never failed to irritate Ryan. That's dangerous. Ryan retorted, interrupting him. Gavin huffed. I should be allowed to hit you back. You know, for what you did on the roof. I never got to hit you back for that. He held his arm up, which had been healing perfectly fine. Ryan's eyebrows sprang up. You're kidding, right? You realize you were waiting to ambush me. No, you don't get to hit me back for that. Nah, it'd be like that time you threw the water bottle at me when we were doing that thing defusing the bombs. I was trying to help you. If that had been a real bomb, you'd be dead. You needed some incentive. Besides, it was empty, and I only let you hit me back to prove it didn't hurt that bad. But it did hurt, Gavin insisted. No, it didn't. You're just a sook. A grin was creeping onto Ryan's face now, even though he tried to hide it. Michael interrupted the banter. Gav, come on. It was an empty water bottle. It hit me in the neck. You hit me in the face. Jeff rolled his eyes. Glad to see you guys are mature enough to put all that petty shit behind you. Gavin made an indignant noise and grinned at Ryan, who did his best to hide the smirk on his face. He started it. Oh, grow up, you two, Michael added mockingly. Jack and Jeremy overheard the conversation from the couch and grinned at each other, silently acknowledging the improved atmosphere in the house.